Hola, 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 hola. Hello, Professor. In this video, I will report the implementation of my pronunciation strategy. First, I chose ED irregular verbs pronunciation problem. I consider this is one of the most common problems that beginners and intermediate students have. Past conjugation of these verbs involves the pronunciation of a consonant sound at the end of the word, which is quite complicated for Spanish native speakers because we use open syllables in the end of the word. This is one of the characteristics of our mother tongue. Therefore, when we need to finish a word with a consonant sound, in this case, the ED sound, we naturally struggle. The accurate pronunciation of verbs in past simple is quite relevant due to the change in meaning that this implies if we mispronounce them. The lack of pronunciation of ED can change the whole meaning of the message and the intention of the speaker. This can provoke misunderstanding among the speakers, but also showed a lack of ability to tell something in past, which is one of the functions that A2 and B1 students must demonstrate. When a speaker is able to tell a story in past, he is enriching his discourse and in terms of accuracy and fluency, and the most important one, intelligibility. Going back to the problem, I have realized that a speaker of my students confused the rules of the pronunciation of ED and made two mistakes. First, they don't pronounce ED because they don't know what sound make, which is wrong because they are telling something in the past, or they pronounce ED in all verbs, which is wrong either, also is wrong. I understand that the first step to support students is to raise awareness about this issue, and then I adapted a storytelling class in order to include the noticing stages about the rules of this pronunciation. Finally, I explained the rules, and then we practice in a controlled and autonomous way. It is important to mention that this activity was carried out in 4 groups. The name of this activity is Write Your Own Biography. The target is to work on segmental consonant sounds, ED especially. The objective of the class was that students at the end of the session were able to write and read a biography using past simple and understanding the rules of pronunciation of ED in regular verbs. And the activity was designed for adults, students, with intermediate and beginners or begin levels. So the first stage is the warm-up, which is a dictation. In this stage, students started to listen and wrote a story that I dictated. It was a short biography of a famous person. Then they posted on Padlet to compare the text while they're with the original one. The activity was chosen first to set the context of the objective of the class. Also, the activity, with this activity, I knew if the students recognized the verbs in past and write them correctly. Some adaptations that I have after some testing I think the main adaptation, the main change is that I segmented the biography in sentences. So the beginner students had the time to separate the ideas. This was beneficial to me for the management of the time, since it provided more organizations on the feedback with larger groups. Here we have some students' productions. We noticed that indeed they didn't recognize some verbs in past. The second part is an awareness stage, especially simple past tense. Here students created some sentences using the images. In this part, or this section, was about connecting grammar points with the communicative task, which is to tell a biography in simple past. Here I explain why we use past simple and the two types of verbs, regular and irregular verbs. Here also students are asked to create more sentences about this biography, and they also are invited to guess who the artist was based on the information they see. The second part is about imitating ED sounds and also the recognition of rules. Knowing the two types of verbs, especially the conjugation of the regular verbs, I explained the different sounds using some verbs from the previous activity. We made some repetitions of these verbs, highlighting the ED sounds. In the first classes, I used this strategy to explain the rules using the vocal tract to explain the point of articulation. However, this was confused. This confuses students because I use the phonological terms. In the next classes, I opted to explain them by acting the points of articulation and especially the effect of the alveolar plosive sound when we release the air in front of a paper. This helped me to discriminate between T and D, indicating one is plosive and while the other one is smooth. Additionally, the sounds were presenting using colors to identify the three rules and sounds. A demonstration about how to recognize voice and voiceless phonemes was necessary to do in order to explain the rules. This strategy is chosen to promote cognitive abilities of recognition and the use of colors to support students in the understanding of the rules. If we have voiced sound, which are all the contrary, here if you pronounce L, there is vibration on your throat, right? So it's L, N, R, J, V, Z. Then we have the controlled practice, where students classify the ED sounds, verbs. In order to apply the information they store in this stage, students classified ED sounds of new verbs in past using a chart. This exercise was chosen in order to provide them a noticing stage. After they finished, we checked every verb and made the corrections. Watched. What about ED? What do you have for ED? Say that again. For ED, for this sound. Merit. Merit, it finished with Y, remember? So when it finished with I or with a vowel, it goes with D. Okay, so merit could be here. Okay, and then we have the free practice. Here we practice dictation again and rehearse the corrections. During this stage, students listened to each other in order to complete a text. In pairs, students receive a biography. One student received the biography the complete story, the complete biography, and the other one received it with gaps. They took turns as narrator and listener. In this strategy, students have the chance to experience cooperative work and gain more confidence while practicing with their partners. Here we have some demonstrations. Students recognize the majority of the verbs, especially intermediate students.
Studied art and wanted to be an artist.
Well, finally, we have a production. Here, students record their voice. In this stage work as an assessment device. With the help of video, students knew how to write a story, a biography in this case, and choose a celebrity of a person in their family to write about. They create biographies recording themselves, written. I observed that ed pronunciation as well as the conjugation of the verbs in past were achieved. Here we have some recordings.
Leonardo DiCaprio is an American actor, producer, and environmental activist, born on November 11 in 1974 in Los Angeles, California. He began his career with television roles but gained fame for his performances in films like What's Eating Gilbert Grapes, Romeo and Juliet, and Titanic, which became a global phenomenon.
Here, the student who initially did not pronounce ed in the verbs, correct herself and rehearses ed, especially here with the verb gained. Let's continue with the next recording.
In 2015, Billie recorded the song Ocean Eyes, which her brother wrote.
So here, the student actually inaccurately pronounced the D sound with voiced sounds or voiced verbs. And finally, we have the last recording where the student, she stopped pronouncing ed in all verbs, and now she distinguished the voiced and voiceless sound rules.
She was invited at different awards. She received a lot of awards. She divorced her parents' son.
Okay, so now let's just reflect on some findings. Apart from the improvement of the pronunciation that we already mentioned, I believe that the implementation of this strategy was popular among students because it shows another dimension of oral production, which is phonology. We learned that phonology is a branch of linguistics that it's underestimated in the methodology. However, doing this activity and see how students were engaged in all the exercises made me realize the importance of including phonology demonstration in classes. When it comes to the future application of this activity, I may say that first, this activity was used in 4 occasions with beginners and intermediate students, but also I modified this class for an advanced student. I did it in a very spontaneous way, which showed me that this activity is versatile and it could be used in different scenarios, contexts, and with different techniques. I think this plan has potential for the future and is adaptable to any audience. And finally, I believe that pronunciation, clarification, and rehearsals enrich EFL classes. They offered chances to practice the more techniques and integrate technological tools such as videos, app, games, and make the explanation that initially was hard about phonology more understandable and engaging. I guess what I learned from this course and this experience is how doable is to include phonology strategies in my daily lessons and how productive and engaging the classes become. I realize that the students enjoy knowing about phonology and some of them already know some precepts and some theory, which means that there are some teachers out there doing a great job introducing this branch. It is not unknown after all. This is very motivating for me as a teacher. Thank you for your attention and for all your work.